Let's get one thing straight before we dive into the shadows of Northern Virginia. The Bunny Man was not a myth. I know, it sounds like the kind of story you tell around a campfire to make your friends jump, or a tall tale cooked up by bored teenagers in the back of a Chevy. But when we talk about Fairfax County, we're talking about a place where myths aren't supposed to live. You know the area. It's the heart of the American suburban dream. Think of those perfectly paved, tree-lined streets where every lawn is a manicured masterpiece, and the houses look like they were pulled straight from a high-end developer's brochure. It's orderly, it's wealthy, and above all, it's predictable. This is a place defined by safety, routine, and a total sense of control, sitting right in the backyard of the halls of power in Washington, D.C. People move to places like this precisely because nothing weird is ever supposed to happen. It's a landscape of comfort, the morning commute, the afternoon soccer practice, and that quiet suburban hum of security. It's the last place on earth you'd expect to find a crack in reality. But that is exactly what happened, and it changed the way people looked at those quiet streets forever. Imagine you're driving home late one night. You're in your comfort zone, surrounded by familiar landmarks, feeling that specific kind of peace that comes with living in one of the safest zip codes in the country. And then you see it, the first fracture in the suburban veneer. It's not a monster leaping from the deep wilderness, and it's not some spectral ghost floating over the pavement. It's something much more disturbing because of how utterly ridiculous and out of place it is. You see a figure. He's not hiding in a dark alley or stalking through an abandoned asylum. He's standing right there, near the road, perhaps leaning against a bridge you cross every single day to get to the grocery store. He's a man, a grown man, and he is wearing a white bunny costume. Think about that for a second. Let the cognitive discomfort really sink in. We are evolutionarily programmed to fear the dark, the unknown, or the sharp teeth of a predator, but our brains don't quite know how to process a 6-foot-tall rabbit standing in the middle of a residential zone. It triggers a specific kind of wrongness, that gut-level feeling that screams, "This does not belong here." A bunny suit is supposed to be soft, festive, and innocent. Seeing it standing in the glare of your headlights on a lonely Virginia road turns that innocence into something grotesque. It's a visual scream. It's the ultimate disruption of the suburban peace because it's a person making a deliberate, terrifying choice to be seen that way. The terror didn't come from a campfire story. It came from the physical presence of a man who forced the people of Fairfax to realize that their sense of security was nothing more than a thin, fragile veil. The Bunny Man wasn't a ghost story meant to entertain. He was a living, breathing anomaly that stood on the side of the road and stared back at the people who thought they were safe. That is where the normality of Fairfax County didn't just bend, it shattered. And once that door to the irrational is opened, you can never truly close it again. You start to realize that the most dangerous things aren't always hiding in the deep woods. Sometimes they're standing right under the streetlights, waiting for you to notice them. In 1970, the people of Fairfax finally had to look. Look, I want you to really lean in and picture this, because if you've never been to Northern Virginia, you might just see Fairfax County as another name on a map, another wealthy suburb of the capital. But geography is never just about coordinates, it's about the soul of a place, and the soul of Fairfax in the 1970s was caught in a strange, jarring transition. When we talk about the precision of these locations, we aren't just giving you a tour, we're pointing to the exact spots where the normal world failed. If you were sitting in the passenger seat with me, driving down Guinea Road at 2 in the morning, you'd start to feel it. Today, it's lined with high-end homes and paved to perfection, but back then, Guinea Road was a ragged edge. It was the front line of a war between the old rural Virginia, with its thick, suffocating forests and hidden creeks, and the new, sterile suburban sprawl. That's the first geographical anchor you have to wrap your head around, the 5400 block of Guinea Road. In 1970, this wasn't just a street, it was a construction site for the American dream. The Kings Park West subdivision was being carved out of the woods, and there's something inherently eerie about a house that isn't finished yet. It's a skeleton of a home. And that is exactly where the Bunny Man chose to manifest. He wasn't in some distant, untouchable wilderness. He was standing on the front porches of homes that families were supposed to move into the following week. He was claiming the threshold. When the police reports talk about the residential zones, they're talking about the spaces we consider sacred, our yards, our driveways, our windows. The precision of Guinea Road matters because it tells us that this figure wasn't a forest creature. He was a neighbor from hell, choosing a location that was specifically designed for safety and turning it into a site of pure, illogical dread. Then you have to follow the map about 6 miles west to the place everyone calls the Bunny Man Bridge, the Colchester Overpass. If you saw it during the day, you might think it's almost charming in a rustic sort of way. It's this narrow, one-lane concrete tunnel built over a century ago, with the old Southern Railway tracks running right across the top. But look closer. Geography here creates a physical trap. Because it's a single-lane bridge, if you're driving through and you see something or someone standing on the other side, you can't just swerve. You're funneled. You are physically committed to that space. The railroad tracks above add this heavy industrial weight to the air, and the concrete of the overpass is damp, cold, and stained by decades of runoff. It feels like a liminal space, a place that is neither here nor there, a transit point where the rules of the neighborhood don't quite apply. The reason this specific bridge became the epicenter isn't just because of a story, it's because of how the location sits in the landscape. It's tucked away in a dip in the road, surrounded by trees that seem to lean in toward the tracks. Even now, with GPS and cell service, that little stretch of Colchester Road feels isolated. It's a dead zone for the senses. When people say the sightings concentrate there, they're talking about a geographical thin spot where the bustling modern world of Fairfax, Virginia feels like it's 1,000 miles away, even though you're only minutes from a Starbucks. What's truly fascinating, and what I want you to consider, is how these locations haven't changed their vibe even as the world around them grew. You can pave the roads, you can put up streetlights, and you can build million-dollar mansions just a few hundred yards away, but you cannot change the way the air feels under that railroad overpass at 2 in the morning. You can't change the way the wind whistles through the gaps in the railroad ties above your head. The excessive geographical precision of this legend is its most chilling feature, because it gives the fear a permanent home. It's not a story about a man in a bunny suit who could be anywhere. It's a story about a man who is there, on Guinea Road, under the Colchester Bridge, standing on the tracks. By anchoring the legend to real, traceable, physical structures that you can go out and touch today, the myth stops being a maybe and starts being a where. It forces you to realize that the ground you're standing on has a memory, and in Fairfax County, that memory has a very specific, very terrifying shape. Now, I want you to push aside the history books and the police reports for a moment. Forget the why and the who, because in the oral tradition of Fairfax, those things don't actually matter. What matters is the image, the raw, unfiltered sight of him. When people talk about the bunny man in hushed tones, they aren't talking about a ghost or a demon. They're talking about a man. But he's a man who has replaced his humanity with something deeply, fundamentally wrong. Imagine you're sitting in the back of a car with your friends. The windows are cracked to let in the cool night air, and someone starts telling the story. They don't start with a date or a name. They start with the suit. This is the heart of the legend, a figure wearing a full-body bunny costume. But here's the thing, the tradition can't seem to agree on what that suit looks like, and that inconsistency is exactly what makes it so unnerving. Some people describe it as a pristine, snowy white mascot suit, the kind you'd see at a children's fair, which makes its presence in the dark woods. The case was never closed. It wasn't disproven, and it certainly wasn't resolved. It was only unfinished. The reports eventually stopped. The police files were tucked away in a basement, and the media found new things to be scared of. But the bunny man was never caught. He never grew old, and he never said he was sorry. He's still out there in the internal tension of every local who avoids that bridge after dark. He's in the silence where evidence should exist. He's the reminder that some things don't end just because we stop talking about them. So, as you head home tonight, just remember, Fairfax County moved on, but the bunny man never did. He's just waiting for the next person to drive through the dark and realize that some nightmares are never truly over. They're just waiting for their turn to be seen again.